I'm a sad dough.
I'm a happy dough.
Have you ever read a recipe for a pie dough or puff pastry and it has indicated you must make it with cold butter and wondered why? What if I do it with, say, room temperature butter? I'm going to show you because I'm going to make my puff pastry with both cold butter, as it should be made, and with room temperature butter, which is a disaster. It's a disaster! Let's start with my quick puff recipe. I actually use this as my standard pie dough recipe. So if you have a recipe that asks for pie dough or for puff pastry, this is the dough for you if you make it this way with the cold stuff. But first, let's see what the temperature of my butter is. It's 52.5. I took this out of the refrigerator about 10 to 15 minutes ago. When I teach class and I teach this exact recipe, I take the butter out 20 minutes before the students get their hands on it because you're really using your hands to incorporate the butter into the dry ingredients. And in this case, we have 12 ounces, 3 sticks of butter, unsalted at that 52 degrees, and then 360 grams of flour. Some of it is pastry flour, some of it is all-purpose flour. Pastry flour has a little less gluten than the all-purpose, so it's a nice balance to create tenderness in the crust. I have a little sea salt in there and some sugar as well. And that sugar doesn't make it a sweet crust, it just lends more flavor to it. So you can use this recipe for both savory and for sweet. So I'm just gonna stir this to make sure that it's all mixed. So next up is the butter. And because this is going to be super flaky, super duper flaky, I'm going to cut these into large chunks. So I'm going to answer that question that you've got in your noggin, can I do this in a food processor or can I use a pastry blender? And the answer is no, because you're going to be making slices like this. You're gonna cut the stick in half lengthwise, and then each half is going to be cut into 4 long shingles, essentially. They're tiles of butter. And this is how big they're gonna be, and they're gonna be relatively thick. They don't have to be perfectly uniform, but that's what you're going for. 4 slices from each half, and then you're gonna put them in your flour. Best salad ever. I'm going to break up the pieces that have not been already broken up. And I want to make sure that each one of these little tiles of butter is coated in flour before I do anything else. So I'm just gonna separate them first. And then once separated, I'm gonna toss everything so that each piece is coated with flour. And then I'm gonna use my fingers. I'm gonna flatten the butter with my fingers. Don't bend your fingers, flatten. And the reason is that we're not trying to knead the butter into the flour. You're trying to flatten the butter. Like so. If it breaks apart, that's fine, but you're still going to be left with really large pieces. Now you can see why you can't use a food processor or a pastry blender, because it would make the pieces too small. We want large pieces of butter. As I'm doing this, 2 things are happening. Some of that flour is getting coated by fat. I call it the Spanx of flour. And then some of that fat is being coated by flour. Yeah, both are happening. And if this were warm butter, that wouldn't be happening. Why? Because when it's cool, it's not melting. Even with manipulation, even with pressing of warm-ish hands, this is staying intact, not melting, and staying cool. By the time I'm done with all of this, the flour should still look dry. It might look a little like cornmeal, but none of it should be wet. If this were any warmer, say room temperature, what would happen is that the water that is present in the butter would start leaking out, and then the flour would start absorbing the water, and you'd start producing gluten too soon. And in order to make a tender dough, you have to be sure that your butter is cold. Otherwise, it'll start melting, it will get absorbed by the flour, and you will have a tough crust. So this is what it's gonna look like. You should be able to pick up all of this and see these independent chunks of butter, big, flat, and then when you bounce them, that flour should cascade off. If it is at all warm and starts melting, it's going to feel wet, and it's not just going to like slough off of the butter, that flour. It's just going to be sitting there sticking to it. Let's take a temperature, shall we? Right now, 60 degrees. So it has increased in the time that I've been manipulating it. So you got to start off colder because it will get warmer. I mean, no duh, but still, it's worth remembering. So at this stage, I'm going to add my water, and I'm going to start with 6 ounces total. I might not need all of it. It's ice cold water. I literally took a jug of ice water and I poured it into my liquid measure. I'm going to add a little squeeze whoop, of lemon juice, and that provides extensibility to the dough. It makes the dough easier to roll out. And I'm going to give myself more real estate, and then I'm going to sprinkle the majority of this all over. Cold water, cold butter, cold water. If it's really hot outside, you can put the bowl of flour in the freezer, get all that cold too. Now I'm going to toss everything together to distribute that moisture without manipulating it too much and producing too much gluten. And as I go around, I'm going to break it up with the paddle. And all I'm doing is distributing the dry stuff and breaking up the moist pockets. I just have like a sprinkle. I barely have any water left. I pretty much used all of it. So now I'm going to take my hands, I'm going to pick up big pieces of it, and I'm going to use my thumbs like windshield wipers. So I'm not pressing down at all. I'm not kneading this. All I'm doing is breaking apart large clumps. And if I do see a really large clump, I'll break it apart by hand, applying very little pressure, being gentle as can be. So this is what you need to be seeing. Instead of having that cascading flour that's dry on top, some of it is now coated with a little bit of moisture. Some of it is protected by the fat. And then when I pick up a big handful, instead of seeing cascading flour, I just see little nubbins of flour and butter in harmony. But this is what it should look like at this point. This should not look like dough at this point. What people do wrong is that they look at this and they go, this isn't right. It needs to look like dough. I need to add more water. And I say to you, please stop yourself. Do not do that, because that's why crusts are tough. You're adding too much water, nothing is cold enough, and then you're massaging the dough too much. All of that makes for a tough crust. This is what it should look like right now. I'm going to distribute everything like that. And then I'm going to press it and smear. It's called fraisage in French. Smear. And so what I'm doing is I'm compacting the dough. Now you can see something that is more dough-like. It's going to look more dough-like at this stage, but what I'm really doing, aside from compacting, is I am smearing that butter in layers into the dough. That is why this is considered a quick puff, a puff pastry, because instead of having a traditional puff where you literally have a block of dough, a block of butter, and a block of dough that you roll and you fold, in this case, you're going to have intermittent blocks of butter throughout the dough. So right now, it's compacted. I'm going to turn it over. Any dry bits I'm going to put on top, and I'm just going to gently compact it again, just to incorporate any dry bits, but not much. 61.3. We are still well below room temperature. This is my bench flour. I'm going to dust my bench. Get this out here. So now it looks a shamble. It doesn't look great, but that's how it should look at this point. So next up, I'm going to make a series of folds and turns. I'm going to roll it out to 12 by 16. I'm going to fold it into a little letter, and then I'm going to keep doing that 3 times to create these layers of butter and dough and butter and dough and utter flakiness. As I'm doing that, I'm warming everything up. So, haha, yes, you've got to make sure that it's cool to begin with, because you don't want it melting at this point either. So I'm going to put a little flour on top of here, a little flour here, and I'm not going to roll yet. I'm going to press and compress a little bit to make it easier to roll out, and then I'm going to roll it to 12 by 16-ish. At this stage, it's not going to be exactly 12 by 16 because look at that. It looks terrible. So I'm going to go 12 by 16-ish and know that by the time I'm at my third fold, it's going to look like dough. So we're going 12, we've got some ways to go, by 16. Let's see where we are. 12-ish, 16-ish. Now I'm going to create a letter or single fold. You go over there. And then any extra flour, I'm just going to brush off. There we go. That was our first fold. Now I'm going to turn it. A little more flour. This is coming back. And I'm going to roll it out once more into an ish. So this is the second roll and turn, and you can see all those streaks of butter. They're nice. So because it's so cool, because we did not melt the butter as we were working it, you can just see it peppering this entire dough everywhere. There's swaths of butter, just independent, living their best life, nice and cool still, making me happy. So that should be 12. It's almost 12. Again, we're going to do a single or letter fold. So you're folding it into thirds. That's number 2. If you are distracted and forget where you are at this point, you can put 2 little finger marks to say, I've done 2 turns, or go, I've done 2 right here. So you're going to move that off to the side. I just did the turn. Boop. A little more flour, and we're going to do our last one. So this is going to be the neat turn. This is where it's going to start looking good. Look how beautiful. And it's called quick puff because I'm making these turns and folds one after the other. With traditional puff pastry, you have to wait about 20 minutes up to an hour between rolling it out and folding it. So quick because it's quick. We're doing it one right after the other after the other. This still feels really cool. It feels really good. Look at that. It's so pretty. It's so nice. And it feels dry. There's nothing tacky or moist or wet about this. It feels dry. It feels like just a really well-composed dough. This is gonna make me sad, I'm gonna stab it to get a read of the temperature. It's now at 64 degrees. It is still below room temperature. So it's maintaining its stability. It's still cool. The butter is still in that lovely non-melty stage. And now I'm going to do a little fold for us. And each of these folds is just creating layers of butter, which will create ultimate flakiness. Jazz hands. And it won't be flaky if the butter has melted. Now it's going to go rest, covered with plastic wrap in the fridge. Make sure that none of the dough is exposed. You do have to make sure that every inch of it, every millimeter of it is completely covered in plastic wrap, otherwise it will dry out. And it needs to kind of relax for about 20 minutes at least. You can leave it overnight. This freezes beautifully up to a month, or as I say, when you find it again. But now it just needs to relax because we put it through a workout. We're gonna make the same dough with exactly the same ingredients. However, we're doing this at room temperature. The butter is at 68.7, kind of at the cooler range of room temperature. And then the water is 72 at the higher range. So we're kind of right in the middle there. Boy, that feels different. Ugh. When I was doing it with the cold butter, it was like this. It was staying totally intact. It wasn't like it was behaving. This is not behaving at all. It is, in fact, being unruly. Ugh. See the sheen upon my hand? That's the butter already melting. And I've got cold hands. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm going to toss the butter and coat it. And now it's like, this is just, whoa. It actually feels kind of good. It is just literally disintegrating in my hand. So when I do it with cold butter, I literally have to put pressure down to make anything happen and to flatten it. And this is just mush, literal mush. It's not looking good. I mean, it's not looking terrible, but I definitely see like clinging flour. So before, when I did it with a cold butter, when I did this, the flour was literally very, very powdery still and just cascaded off the butter. In this case, it's like a summer day and it's hot, its hair just got frizzy and it doesn't want to move. This is how my flour is behaving right now. Don't worry, it's gonna get worse. I'm going to So I'm leaving exactly, I have a skosh of water left over from the last one. I did the same thing. I'm gonna toss. And what I am noticing is as I'm tossing, before, when it was cold, you could literally see the separate pieces moving and a-shaking. They were easily separating because so much of that dough was so cold, but right now it is all behaving like a warm mass. Hey. I'm just doing that windshield wiper to break apart any very wet pieces, which it all feels wet. It feels really wet. But still, because I'm being delicate, I'd like you to notice it doesn't look like a cohesive dough yet, which is a good thing, because it shouldn't. But it is definitely feeling much warmer and much wetter than the other one. So let's do the fraisage or the smearing. Ugh. I don't know if you remember, but when I was doing it with the cold everything, nothing was sticking to my hands. I feel like a bit of a monster right now because everything is just glomming onto my fingers. But we shall persevere and continue for science. So I'm going to, it's gonna be gross. I'm going to press and smear. It feels like Play-Doh. This is gross. But I'm just gonna do what I did before. I'm gonna compress any dry bits, really weren't any. Here we go. So now it's compressed and I'm going to roll it out as I did before, 12 by 16, folding it 3 times. Let's go. I have my 2 doughs, frowny face and smiley face. And I think I can already tell this one looks misshapen. This one looks very sad. But we're still gonna work with them and see. So what I'm going to do is make Danish shapes that when baked, if you have a really good puff, you will see the full range of its jazz hands. I'm going to cut from this, which is sad puff, a small piece, a little less than 1/4. And then we're going to check its cross section to see if we see any discernible layers of butter. I do not. Now we have Smiley. And Smiley reminds me that back in the day, there is the legend of puff pastry. And the legend of puff pastry, of how it was first invented, was that it was a mistake, allegedly. That there was an apprentice baker in France somewhere, let's say it's the 1600s, maybe earlier, who was making a dough and forgot to add the butter. He looked off to the side and he said, "Oh, I forgot the butter," and then starts layering it into the dough rather than incorporating it in the beginning. And then from that came puff pastry, because when they put it in the oven, it got flaky and fantastic. And instead of being a mistake, it became a wonder of the French pastry world. So that is the legend of puff pastry. Whether it's true or not, I do not know. So about a quarter of the dough, let's see. Look at that. Because this is fresh out of the fridge, I'm not going to start rolling it right away. I call this Julia Childsing it. I'm going to loosen it up a little by pounding it. And this relaxes the dough. It's fun. When you roll puff, you see those discernible layers, you roll with the layers. So I'm essentially compressing the layers like this, instead of like taking them and then rolling against them. Because you want to keep that layer structure alive and well within the pastry. So I'm going to roll 2 pieces into a square, into a Danish shape. So off to the side, I have a little filling. Along with my peaches, I have 4 ounces of cream cheese, 1 egg yolk, and 3 tablespoons of confectioner sugar, along with just a little dash of vanilla. This guy, I'm going to make into a Danish shape. So what I'm going to do is cut through So I've cut through here all the way. I've cut through here all the way, but these 2 sides, I'm not going to cut through all the way. So this corner, completely loose. This one, still attached. I'm going to egg wash with inside this box, and that's going to be glue. So we turn that over like that. And then that goes over like that. And then I'm going to give it a little more egg wash. And I am brushing this so that there's just a little bit of egg wash on there, so that when I brush the top, that there is no chance that it drips over the edge. This is my little mixture, my concoction of that cream cheese, confectioner sugar, a yolk, and a little bit of vanilla. And I'm going to pipe it just within my little handy dandy box. Yummy. Oh, those peaches are good. This one's going into the oven first. Then we'll do sad. I tested the theory, do you really need cold butter when a recipe says use cold butter? And the results? Yeah, you really do. Because cannot you see? This right here, cold butter, perfect, jazz hands galore. This one over here, sad, sad pastry. All the butter was absorbed in the dough. None of it was available to steam and jazz hands. So it is flat, it is sad. It's actually quite a pretty pastry, but then you look at its cousin and you're like, nah, this one's better. So when a recipe says use cold butter, use that cold butter, because then you'll get jazz hands.
If you're interested in more in-depth classes, both in person and online, visit sugargliderkitchen.com.
Hey, don't forget to punch down those like and subscribe buttons.